Even though steel cage traps are widely considered an effective way to control wild hogs, these animals continue to tear through farmlands, forests, and even suburban neighborhoods across the US. So what's really going on? Are we using the right tools the wrong way? Or is there more to the wild hog problem than we've been told? This video takes a deep dive into the world of feral hog control, combining science, first-hand stories, and the gritty reality that farmers and landowners face every single day. Wild hogs aren't just a nuisance, they're a full-blown crisis. Once limited to a few states in the South, they've exploded across the country, with an estimated 9 million feral hogs now spread across 39 states. Just 3 decades ago, the number was closer to 2 million. This population boom hasn't just caught experts off guard. It's devastated farms, endangered ecosystems, and put increasing pressure on rural communities. And make no mistake, this isn't just a Texas problem anymore. From California vineyards to Florida wetlands, and from the cornfields of the Midwest to the hardwood forests of the East, wild hogs are rooting up land, wiping out native species, and destroying decades of work in a single night. Their impact is global. 2 countries like Australia, Germany, and Spain are fighting similar battles. But in the US, their sheer scale and speed make them especially difficult to manage. So how bad is it? Really? According to USDA estimates, feral hogs are responsible for up to $1.5 billion in damage each year. They plow through crops, tear up irrigation systems, trample young trees, contaminate water sources, and even threaten livestock and pets. They've been known to attack humans when cornered. And because they reproduce so rapidly, 2 litters a year with up to 12 piglets each time, they can double their population in a matter of months. That's why experts agree. Unless we remove at least 60% of the hog population annually in every infested area, their numbers will continue to grow. Let that sink in. If we're not constantly pushing back, we're losing ground. In response, the USDA and individual states have launched aggressive control programs, pouring millions into research, equipment, and education. In 2024, Texas and Oklahoma approved the use of Capit, a specially designed toxic bait. It's a controversial move, but many landowners see it as a last resort in a fight that's starting to feel unwinnable. Among all the control methods available, one stands out for its effectiveness when used correctly: the corral trap. But here's where things go sideways. Many people, even well-meaning farmers, set up these traps incorrectly. And wild hogs, as destructive as they are also incredibly smart. They remember where danger lies. If a trap is placed wrong, triggered too soon, or built with the wrong materials, the entire effort can backfire. Once hogs associate a location or smell with danger, they'll avoid it for good. So what makes a successful trap? A proper corral trap should be large, typically 30 to 40 feet in diameter. This allows you to capture the entire sounder, a group of hogs, in one go. Smaller traps might catch 1 or 2, but the rest will scatter and become even harder to catch next time. Trap walls must be at least 5 feet high to prevent escapes, and using a remote-controlled gate dramatically increases your chances of success compared to manual closures. Materials matter too. Strong steel panels are essential. If you use chicken wire, flimsy fencing, or wooden stakes, these animals will bulldoze right through it. There are countless videos online of hogs flipping open gates, jumping over walls, or ripping their way out of poorly built traps. But the biggest mistake people make isn't the trap, it's the placement. According to research from Texas A&M, the most important factor in successful trapping is location. Wild hogs are creatures of habit. They stick to the same trails, watering holes, and feeding spots unless something drives them away. So, your trap should go where they already feel safe, not where it's convenient for you. Look for signs: freshly rooted soil, muddy wallows, broken branches, or hoof prints in the dirt. Areas near creeks, ponds, or irrigation ditches are prime real estate. And once you've found the right spot, the next key step is pre-baiting. Pre-baiting means placing food in the trap area, but leaving the gate open for 3 to 7 days before you actually plan to trap. This gets the hogs used to the location. They start to trust it. You're building a routine for them, and trust is everything. One proven bait that's surprisingly effective: fermented corn. Soak it in water for a week until it gives off a sour, pungent smell. Hogs love it. It's like barbecue for them. One rancher outside San Angelo, Texas, shared that he caught 28 hogs in a single night using fermented corn in a well-placed trap near a creek. He'd tried for months with poor results, but once he adjusted his timing and used pre-baiting, the results were staggering. Other options include fruits like watermelon, peaches, or apples, especially during the hot summer months when hogs are desperate for moisture. Commercial high-protein baits are also available, often attracting larger sounders. But here's the thing. You can have the perfect trap, the right bait, and the ideal location, and still fail if your timing is off. Wild hogs are mostly nocturnal. They're most active between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. That means you need to monitor the trap during these hours using trail cams or motion sensors. In the early days of pre-baiting, leave the gate open. Let the hogs enter and exit freely. Only trigger the trap once you've seen that 80% or more of the sounder is consistently going inside. Trigger it too early, and you may only catch a few stragglers. Worse, the rest may learn the danger and never return. And whatever you do, don't leave caught hogs in the trap for too long. Their squeals and stress signals can alert the rest of the group, making them avoid the area entirely. Swift removal is key. As soon as the trap closes, handle the animals quickly and clean the site thoroughly. Many experienced trappers also rotate trap locations every few months to prevent behavioral adaptation. But behind all the strategies, stats, and steel panels, there's a deeper story, one about resilience. Talk to a farmer in Central Texas who's lost half his cornfield in one night. Or a rancher in Oklahoma whose fences are repaired weekly because hogs crash through them like battering rams. Or a wildlife biologist watching native deer and ground birds disappear from an ecosystem overrun by invasive pigs. This isn't just wildlife management. It's a fight to reclaim balance. It's about people trying to protect what they've worked for, often for generations. And every successful trap is not just about catching pigs, it's about reclaiming control. So how about you? Have you ever dealt with feral hogs? Tried building a trap? Succeeded? Failed? Share your story in the comments. The more we learn from each other, the better we can fight back. The wild hog invasion is one of the most overlooked environmental and agricultural threats in North America. But with the right knowledge, shared experience, and smart strategy, we can start turning the tide. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around, because this fight is far from over, and there's still a lot more to learn. Of historical errors. Wild hogs didn't just sprout up in America like dandelions. They're the result of some laughably bad decisions from centuries past. The saga kicks off in 1493 when Christopher Columbus, the OG explorer, brought 8 pigs from Europe to Cuba. The plan? Raise them for bacon to feed his crew. But these pigs had other ideas. They weren't about to be anyone's pork chop. They bolted, launching their own great American hog venture before humans even got their bearings. Picture Columbus staring at his empty pig pen, muttering, "Well, I guess I just unleashed an ecological disaster. Oops." Fast forward to the 16th century, and another Spanish explorer, Hernando de Soto, decided to up the ante. In 1539, he hauled pigs to Florida, thinking, "These'll be great for snacks on our road trip." Spoiler alert, pigs don't play nice. Some escaped, others were left behind when his expedition fell apart. These runaway porkers turned into wild warriors, breeding faster than a viral TikTok trend. If De Soto were alive today, he'd probably shake his head and say, "Why didn't I just stick to beef jerky?" The plot thickens in the late 1800s when European hunters decided to spice things up. Bored with chasing deer, they imported Eurasian wild boars, possibly from Germany's Black Forest, to hunting grounds in New Hampshire and beyond. These guys were like, "Deer are so last century. Let's hunt some hardcore hogs." The imported boars hooked up with the local feral pigs, creating a super tough, super rowdy hybrid, like mixing Monster Energy with espresso. These hogs didn't just survive. They conquered every terrain from dense forests to wide open prairies. But here's the real kicker. Some of America's wild hogs started as farm pigs. Back in the day, farmers let their pigs roam free. like giving them a gap year to find themselves. Some of these pigs went full rebel, ditching the farm life for the wild side. Within a few generations, they grew bristly hair, sprouted tusks, and became legit wild hogs. Imagine a farm pig looking in a puddle, saying, "Screw this, I'm going full Mad Max." This going feral process turned cuddly porkers into a gang of chaos-causing hogs ready to rumble. Genetically, wild hogs trace back to Southeast Asia from the early Pleistocene, spreading across Eurasia and North Africa. The ones in America are descendants of European boars and domesticated pigs, packing a genetic combo that makes them tougher than a $2 steak. In a funny way, they're like ecological superheroes minus the capes plus a whole lot of attitude. Humans can only sigh and say, "Hogs, why you gotta be so good at surviving?" Today, 6 million wild hogs are tearing it up across 35 states, with Texas as their main stage. That's more fans than a Taylor Swift concert. They're not just wildlife. They're the ultimate nightmare for farmers, hunters, and anyone who just wants to hike without a hog chase scene. The havoc of wild hogs, living plows, and epic pranks. Wild hogs aren't just numerous. They're the kings of chaos with a rap sheet longer than a summer blockbuster. They breed like crazy, outsmart traps, and wreck everything like they've got a personal vendetta. Here's a rundown of their greatest hits, with some jokes to keep you grinning through the madness. Economic damage. Hogs, crushing farmers' dreams since 1493. Wild hogs are nicknamed living plows because they love digging up dirt for snacks. They turn cornfields, wheat crops, and soybean patches into post-apocalyptic wastelands, leaving farmers ready to cry into their overalls. Experts estimate they cause $2.5 billion in damages yearly to agriculture, forestry, and livestock. That's enough cash to buy a private island, or at least a really nice tractor. Texas farmers probably have nightmares of hogs laughing maniacally, chanting, "Your crops are ours." But wait, there's more. Hogs don't stop at crops. They smash fences, wreck irrigation systems, and even mess up roads and levees. Imagine spending all weekend building a shiny new fence. The scorching heat of the Anatolian mountains clings to every breath, a relentless force that tests the will of anyone daring to step into this wild land. Over years of hunting, through countless dangers, one memory stands etched in my soul, a moment that still sends shivers down my spine. It was the breathtaking face-off with a massive wild boar, a creature of raw, untamed power. I was with Mehmet, my closest friend and a seasoned hunter, a man who knows these mountains like the back of his hand. What started as a routine boar control hunt, well, it turned into something else entirely. Nature, you see, has a way of humbling us all. Anatolia's dense oak forests and endless wheat fields breed boars unlike any other giants nurtured by the land's bounty. Mehmet crouched low, studying fresh tracks in the damp earth, broken branches, scattered droppings. His eyes narrowed. "There's a leader out there," he whispered, "and it's huge." His words hit me like a jolt. My heart raced. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. It felt like a challenge, a test of courage set by the wilderness itself. We split up, taking positions along familiar forest paths. I crouched behind a massive rock, my back against an ancient oak, my breath steady, my senses sharp. The forest was alive, leaves rustling, birds calling faintly. I checked my rifle, fingers grazing the trigger, ready for whatever came next. But deep down, a flicker of unease stirred. I'd hunted before, but something about this felt different. Then, a gunshot echoed from Mehmet's position, a sharp crack that shattered the silence. My pulse surged. Adrenaline flooded my veins. I gripped my rifle tighter, eyes locked on the path ahead. Moments later, there it was. A colossal boar stepped out from the brush. Its black coat gleamed under the dappled sunlight. Its curved tusks glinted like blades. And those eyes, they didn't flinch. They stared at me, curious, almost defiant. Time froze. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might betray me. The boar took a step forward, then another. Each thud of its hooves sent a tremor through the ground. It was closing the gap, and with every second, I felt the danger grow. If I didn't act, I'd be the prey. My instincts screamed. I raised my rifle, aimed, and fired. The shot tore through the stillness. The boar staggered, then collapsed, its massive body limp on the forest floor. I exhaled, my breath shaky, relief washing over me like a wave. I'd done it, but only just. Before I could catch my breath, Mehmet's voice crackled through the radio. More of them out there. Stay put. My heart leapt again. I held my ground, eyes scanning the path. Minutes later, another boar appeared, just as massive as the first. Its tusks gleamed, its bulk casting a shadow across the trail. But this time I was ready. The fear was still there. Today, we embark on an in-depth exploration of a menacing, untamed threat silently spreading across the American landscape: feral hogs. These formidable creatures, armed with razor-sharp tusks, are not merely wreaking havoc on fertile farmlands, but are also sowing terror through sudden and perilous attacks on humans. From the sprawling ranches of Texas to the tranquil suburban neighborhoods of Florida, the escalating presence of feral hogs has become a persistent nightmare for communities nationwide. Could you be residing in or near a high-risk area? Join us as we unravel the full scope of this growing danger through a detailed report. Feral hogs, also known as wild boars, feral pigs, or simply wild hogs, are an invasive species notorious for their aggressive behavior. They have now established populations in more than 35 states across the United States. With an estimated population exceeding 6 million, these animals inflict catastrophic economic damage, with losses surpassing $2.5 billion annually. Their destructive behaviors include obliterating crops, eroding soil, and even damaging critical infrastructure such as roads and levees. However, the most alarming aspect of their proliferation is their direct assaults on humans, which result in severe injuries and, in rare but chilling instances, fatalities. A meticulous study conducted by scientist John J. Mayer at the Savannah River National Laboratory documented 412 feral hog attacks on humans worldwide between 1825 and 2012. Strikingly, the United States accounted for 24% of these incidents, approximately 101 attacks. Even more concerning, 70% of these attacks occurred in the relatively short period between 2000 and 2012, signaling a sharp increase in their frequency and severity. Experts caution that the true number of attacks is likely significantly higher, as many minor incidents go unreported or undocumented. What makes feral hogs such a daunting threat? These animals combine extraordinary physical prowess with an arsenal of dangerous traits. They can weigh anywhere from 200 to over 660 pounds, move at lightning speeds of up to 25 miles per hour, and leap over obstacles as high as 3 feet. Their most lethal weapon, however, is their long, dagger-like tusks, capable of effortlessly slicing through flesh and muscle. Compounding the danger, feral hogs are carriers of over 30 types of bacteria and viruses, along with nearly 40 different parasites, which can lead to severe infections from even minor wounds they inflict. Let's now examine some sobering statistics about feral hog attacks in the United States. which underscore the gravity of this issue. Shockingly, approximately 15% of attacks involving physical contact result in the victim's death. This fatality rate doubles when the victim is alone, highlighting the heightened risk of solitary encounters. Texas leads the nation in attack frequency, accounting for 24% of all recorded incidents, followed by Florida at 12% and South Carolina at 10%. The months of January, April, October, and November mark the peak periods for attacks, potentially due to increased aggression during breeding seasons or food scarcity. The majority of victims are adult males, often attacked while walking alone in rural or wooded areas. Common injuries include deep lacerations and puncture wounds, primarily to the legs, thighs, and feet. Data reveals that 82% of attacks are perpetrated by solitary male hogs, which are fiercely territorial. In contrast, attacks involving herds are typically led by sows aggressively defending their piglets. These statistics are far more than cold numbers. They represent harrowing stories of individuals confronting life-threatening danger on the very lands they call home. To fully grasp the severity of this threat, we will now delve into several high-profile attacks that vividly illustrate the ferocity of feral hogs. Numbers alone cannot convey the visceral terror posed by feral hogs. To provide a clearer picture of their savagery, let's examine a series of documented attacks that highlight their unpredictable and brutal nature. In Texas, a man leisurely strolling on his ranch was blindsided by a charging male feral hog. With its razor-sharp tusks, the beast tore deep gashes into the man's legs and thighs before fleeing into the brush. Fortunately, prompt medical intervention saved his life, but the trauma lingered. In a separate incident in Florida, a woman tending to her garden near her home was suddenly ambushed by a herd of feral hogs, including a protective sow and her piglets. Despite her attempts to fend them off, she sustained multiple bites and scratches across her body. Wildlife experts later determined that the sow's aggressive behavior was driven by her instinct to shield her young from perceived danger. These cases represent only a fraction of the countless similar attacks occurring nationwide. They underscore a critical reality. The threat posed by feral hogs extends far beyond agricultural destruction, encroaching directly on human safety and well-being. So, how can we protect ourselves and respond effectively to the dangers posed by feral hogs? Wildlife experts strongly recommend heightened vigilance for those living in or near areas with known feral hog populations. Avoid walking alone in remote or wooded areas, particularly during the high-risk months of January, April, October, and November. If you encounter a feral hog, do not attempt to approach or scare it away. Instead, maintain a safe distance and immediately notify local authorities, such as wildlife management agencies or law enforcement. In the unfortunate event of an attack, remaining calm is critical. Defend yourself using any available means, whether a stick, rock, or other object, and prioritize escaping to safety. After an attack, seek immediate medical attention to treat wounds and prevent infections, as feral hog-inflicted injuries carry a high risk of bacterial or parasitic contamination. The raw data on feral hog attacks paints a disturbing picture, but the individual stories behind these incidents evoke a visceral sense of dread, revealing the sheer brutality of these wild creatures. Below, we recount several chilling, high-profile attacks that vividly depict the lurking danger across America. A blood-soaked tragedy in Anahuac, Texas, 2019. On November 24, 2019, the small town of Anahuac, Texas, was plunged into horror by a gruesome tragedy. Christine Rollins, a compassionate 59-year-old woman, met a sudden and agonizing end. Moments after stepping out of her vehicle, she was overwhelmed by a massive herd of feral hogs in a terrifying ambush. The air filled with the sounds of snuffling snouts and hooves clawing at the dry earth, quickly drowned out by Rollins' desperate cries for help. With no chance to escape, she was attacked by large hogs wielding dagger-like tusks and aggressive piglets swarming in unison. Sheriff Brian Hawthorne, a seasoned law enforcement veteran of 35 years, described the scene as the worst nightmare imaginable. Rollins' body bore countless deep bite wounds, her flesh torn apart to reveal bone and sinew. Blood soaked the ground, staining patches of withered grass red. She succumbed to catastrophic blood loss, dying in excruciating pain and leaving an indelible scar on the tight-knit Anahuac community. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the hog's sharp tusks and powerful jaws severed major blood vessels, causing her rapid and torturous death. A life-or-death struggle against a tusk-wielding beast in East Texas, 2019. In the same year, a remote corner of East Texas became the stage for a heart-pounding confrontation. A 50-year-old farmer, tending to his ranch under the glow of a crimson sunset, was caught off guard by a monstrous male feral hog. Resembling a creature forged from steel bristles and armed with gleaming, lethal tusks, the 400-pound beast charged with unrelenting fury. Before the farmer could react, the hog's 3-inch tusks plunged into his thigh, carving a 4-inch long, 2-inch deep gash. Searing pain erupted as blood poured from the wound. Collapsing in the desolate field, the farmer faced certain death until a colleague discovered him and rushed him to medical care. Though his life was spared, the wound became severely infected, swelling with pus and requiring multiple grueling surgeries. The long, traumatic recovery left both physical and emotional scars, a stark reminder of the peril lurking in feral hog territory. This incident underscores the extreme danger of inadvertently trespassing into the domain of a solitary boar, whose territorial instincts drive it to attack with relentless aggression. A blood-stained night of terror in Bastrop, Texas, 2021. In the eerie stillness of Bastrop County in 2021, the tranquility of a rural night was shattered by the crack of gunfire. A group of hunters pursuing feral hogs fired a shot that struck a massive 330-pound male hog. Rather than retreating in pain, the wounded beast unleashed a bone-chilling roar, its eyes blazing like fiery coals, and charged the hunters with terrifying speed. A 30-year-old hunter, caught off guard, was unable to evade the onslaught. The hog slammed into him, sending him crashing to the ground with the sickening sound of snapping bone. Its razor-sharp tusks tore through his calf, leaving a gaping 3-inch wound that bled profusely, soaking the surrounding earth. His horrified companions unleashed a barrage of gunfire to subdue the enraged animal and save their friend's life. The victim endured weeks of hospitalization, grappling with excruciating pain and a painstaking recovery process. This harrowing encounter serves as a grim warning of the lethal unpredictability of wounded feral hogs, which will fight to the death, transforming a routine hunt into a nightmarish ordeal. A terrifying invasion in a Houston neighborhood, Texas, 2024. On January 15, 2024, the serene Garden Villas neighborhood in Houston was jolted by a shocking and terrifying intrusion. Carl White, a wheelchair-bound resident, faced a moment of sheer panic within the confines of his own garage. Without warning, a 200-pound feral hog, its bristling fur and glowing red eyes radiating menace, burst into the space. The faint glow of a light bulb illuminated its long, razor-sharp tusks, casting an ominous shadow. White's loyal dog, Moose, barked furiously, desperately alerting his owner to the imminent danger. It locked eyes with me, full of hatred, like it was ready to charge and knock me over, White recalled, his voice trembling with lingering fear. In a split-second act of courage, White fired a pellet gun at the hog, startling it into fleeing. Though he escaped physical harm, the psychological toll was profound, transforming his once secure home into a place of constant unease. This incident highlights the alarming audacity of feral hogs as they increasingly encroach on urban and suburban areas, driven by shrinking habitats or the allure of easily accessible food sources, bringing them into dangerously close proximity to humans. A savage nighttime assault in Montgomery County, Texas, 2020. In the dead of night in 2020, a family in Montgomery County, Texas, was thrust into chaos by a terrifying invasion. A 220-pound feral hog, its wild eyes gleaming with ferocity, stormed into their backyard, smashing through the back door with a single powerful charge. Without hesitation, it attacked two sleeping dogs, sparking a frenzy of desperate barks. Awakened by the commotion at 4 a.m., the homeowner rushed outside, narrowly avoiding becoming the hog's next target as he took cover behind a large fish tank. His wife, roused by the chaos, found herself pursued by the relentless beast in the pitch-black darkness. In a desperate bid to protect his family, the husband retrieved a bow and arrow and fatally shot the rampaging hog, ending the nightmarish ordeal. Though the immediate threat was neutralized, the family was left with a shattered door and a lingering sense of dread, haunted by the realization that danger could strike without warning, even within the sanctity of their home. These bone-chilling accounts do more than chronicle isolated incidents. They weave a broader, alarming narrative about the escalating aggression and danger posed by feral hogs across the United States. It is imperative that we confront this threat with seriousness and equip ourselves with the knowledge and tools necessary to mitigate and respond to this ever-present peril. Why do feral hogs attack humans? While feral hogs are not inherently aggressive in every encounter, several critical factors contribute to their potential for violence. The first is their fierce territorial instinct. Solitary male hogs, or boars, are particularly prone to attacking perceived intruders, especially during the breeding season when their sensitivity to territorial boundaries is heightened. Equally significant is the powerful maternal instinct of sows. When they sense any threat to their vulnerable piglets, sows transform into ferocious defenders, willing to attack with unrelenting force to protect their offspring. Food scarcity also plays a pivotal role. Environmental factors such as prolonged droughts or the destruction of natural habitats can drive feral hogs to venture into human-populated areas in search of sustenance, significantly increasing the likelihood of confrontations. Finally, a wounded or cornered feral hog represents an extraordinary danger. When pushed to the brink, these animals unleash their full strength in a desperate bid for survival, and their raw power in such moments is nothing short of terrifying. Beyond their physical attributes, feral hogs possess a remarkable level of intelligence that amplifies their threat. They can learn to evade traps, memorize the faces of hunters who pursue them, and even coordinate within herds to counter dangers. This cunning adaptability makes them a uniquely formidable adversary, demanding heightened awareness and caution from those who share their environment. How can we protect ourselves from feral hogs? To coexist safely in regions where feral hogs are prevalent, individuals must adopt a series of proactive and defensive measures. The cornerstone of prevention is avoiding direct confrontation. If you encounter a feral hog, maintain a minimum distance of 30 feet. Resist the urge to run, as this may trigger a chase. Instead, back away slowly while keeping the hog in your line of sight. If pursued, seek immediate refuge by climbing a tree, entering a vehicle, or scaling any elevated structure to stay out of reach. Securing your property is equally critical. Install robust steel fencing at least 4 feet high to deter hogs from entering your land. Additionally, manage household waste diligently, ensuring it is sealed and inaccessible to prevent attracting hogs to residential areas. For those engaging in feral hog hunting, safety must be the top priority. Always hunt in groups to ensure mutual support and protection. Equip yourself with firearms of adequate caliber, such as a .308 rifle or a 12-gauge shotgun, to guarantee a swift and humane kill, reducing the risk of a wounded hog retaliating. Prompt reporting of feral hog sightings near human settlements is another vital step. Contact local wildlife authorities, such as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, or the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, via their official hotlines or websites to alert them to the presence of hogs. Lastly, remain vigilant about the health risks associated with feral hogs. Avoid direct contact with deceased hogs or their raw meat, as they can transmit serious diseases such as brucellosis and leptospirosis, which pose significant health threats. Feral hogs are far more than ordinary wildlife. They embody the raw, untamed essence of the wilderness, coupled with remarkable intelligence and an indomitable spirit. Yet, as the boundaries between human civilization and their domain continue to blur, the resulting clashes can lead to devastating and unforgettable tragedies, as evidenced by the fates of Christine Rollins, Carl White, and the hunters of Bastrop. While the likelihood of a feral hog attack remains exceedingly rare, estimated at less than 1 in a million, complacency is not an option. Armed with vigilance, knowledge, and preparedness, we can safeguard ourselves and our communities from this formidable and unpredictable threat. This translation preserves the original content's depth and urgency while enhancing its readability and narrative flow for an American audience. If you have specific areas where you'd like further elaboration or adjustments, please let me know. Dawn in Texas isn't always the peaceful start to a new day. Across the endless fields of corn, while the morning mist still clings to the base of each stalk and the first light of day struggles to push back the darkness, a sound echoes. Not a rooster's crow, not the hum of a tractor springing to life, but a guttural, rasping roar rising from the tree line, like the unholy cry of something dark and ancient. It's the sound of wild hogs. Joe Hargrove stands silently by the weathered wooden fence, his hunting rifle slung loosely over his shoulder, eyes clouded with sorrow as he watches the dark shapes tearing through his field. Yesterday, that land was still a dream. Rows of bright green corn, tall and trembling in the wind, soaking in the sun's promise. A promise of harvest, of a season bountiful enough to pay off the bank, send his daughter to college, and keep the family farm alive for another generation. Today, all that remains is wreckage. Uprooted earth, trampled stalks, and gnarled roots jutting up like clotted veins from the heart of the land. Joe doesn't cry. Farm men don't cry easily. But his eyes are bloodshot, not just from lack of sleep. It's the look of a man watching a part of his soul being torn apart. Not by thieves, not by storms, but by wild hogs. They come like living nightmares, unannounced, without mercy. And it's not just Joe. Millions of farmers across America have seen them, heard them, felt the devastation they leave in their wake. From the scorched cornfields of Texas, to the peanut-rich red soil of Georgia, to the lush green valleys of Hawaii. Wherever life grows, wild hogs leave their marks. Bite marks, claw marks, scars of ruin. This isn't just the story of a wild animal. It's a war between man and nature, between order and chaos, between dreams and despair. Every roar in the darkness is a challenge, a warning bell. And for a long time now, dawn hasn't meant hope. It's become the hour we face the unspoken fear. To understand how wild hogs became such a terrifying force, we have to travel back over 500 years, to when Spanish ships first touched the wild shores of what would become the New World. The explorers brought dreams of conquest, incomplete maps, and pigs, livestock meant to serve as walking food supplies for their long journeys. These pigs were tame, docile, short-haired, and wide-eyed. They were kept in rough pens in nameless lands. But America's wilderness, with its dense forests and wildly varied climate, didn't take long to awaken something deeper in them. Some pigs escaped. Some were released on purpose as a self-renewing food source. No one imagined these seemingly harmless creatures would plant the seeds of a centuries-long disaster. In the 19th century, a decision was made, one that seemed innocent but proved catastrophic. European wild boars were imported for sport hunting. These were no ordinary pigs. They had long tusks, black bristled fur, and fierce predatory instincts. And, as if fate were mocking human arrogance, these European boars bred with the already feral American pigs. The result? A new breed, fast, smart, strong, and utterly fearless. A true monster with the survival instincts of the wild and the destructive potential of a hurricane. They bred like weeds after a spring rain. One adult female can birth 2 litters a year, each with 6 to 12 piglets. No fence can hold them. No natural predator can stop them. And in just a few centuries, from a handful of outliers, they've become a rampaging army of 6 to 9 million strong, spread across more than 35 states, inching ever closer to the tipping point, total uncontainability. In Texas, Where Joe Hargrove fights his daily battle, wild hogs aren't just wildlife. They're familiar faces in the night. They're nightmares with hooves. They know how to hide. They know how to avoid traps. They know how to strike when your guard is down. They're warriors in the shadows. Clever, ruthless, patient. Joe still remembers the stories his grandfather used to tell. Back in the 1950s, when Texas was still the land of opportunity, wild hogs would occasionally appear at the forest's edge. A handful, nothing serious. Back then, his granddad would say, they were like a strange wind, here one day, gone the next, leaving nothing behind. Now they're a damn hurricane, because when an animal no longer fears people, when it learns our routines, sneaks past fences, dodges cameras and traps, it's no longer just wildlife. It's a force, intelligent, relentless, expanding. From the golden fields of Kansas to the waterlogged swamps of Florida, from the rolling Appalachians to the fog-soaked valleys of California, wild hogs move like a silent tide sweeping across America, leaving behind not just hoof prints, but gaping holes in livelihoods, in ecosystems, and in agricultural security. And in the hearts of people like Joe, they leave something deeper. A constant, gnawing fear that the thing screaming in the night isn't just a hog. It's the future, slowly being torn to shreds. Imagine this, you're a farmer. Every morning you rise with the smell of damp soil in your lungs, birdsong in your ears, and golden sunlight spilling through your window. Sunlight that paints the old porch and rows of dew-wet corn in the soft glow of hope. That field in front of you, it's the sum of aching backs, calloused hands, and dreams soaked in sweat. But then one morning you step outside and you see hell made real. No more neat rows, no more green promise, just earth churned like a battlefield. Uprooted stalks, snapped corn, leaves scattered like confetti from some brutal celebration. And everywhere, deep, brazen hoofprints, the calling card of wild hogs. These creatures don't just destroy, they annihilate. They don't care about your work, your plans, your future. Their snouts, sharp as radar, can sniff out buried roots beneath layers of soil. Their hooves are strong enough to rip through acres in mere hours. And they eat everything: corn, wheat, soybeans, peanuts, sweet potatoes, sugarcane. Nothing stops their hunger. Nothing tames their wildness. Cold, hard numbers say it all. America loses about $2.5 billion each year to hog-related damage. But those numbers don't carry the pain. Not like the pain Maria Thompson from Georgia knows. Maria, hands rough like tree bark, back bent from decades under the sun, still remembers the night that changed everything. It had been her best season yet. Her peanut plants were lush, just beginning to bloom. She had prayed. She had dared to hope. And then, in a single night, the nightmare came. She walked into the field at first light and froze. Everything had been shredded. The soil was ripped into chunks like it had been clawed by the devil himself. They came like ghosts, then vanished like a storm, Maria said, her voice hoarse. I felt robbed by something you can't reason with, can't stop. Since that night, Maria hasn't slept deeply. Every sound in the dark, every wind whistling through her fields tightens her chest. She built fences, set traps, even learned how to use a gun. But the hogs always find a way, breaking the fence, dodging the traps, and coming back, like some cruel reminder that peace is a luxury she no longer owns. Maria is not alone. The hoofprints of wild hogs have left thousands of scars across America's farmland. Not just visible ones, emotional ones. They destroy irrigation systems, dig up water channels, fight through electrical lines and farming equipment. In some places, they even crash through greenhouses, turning rows of tender young plants into chaos. Every hog's footprint isn't just a dent in the dirt. It's a wound in a farmer's soul. And each morning, instead of praying for rain or sun, they pray for something simpler. Please, don't let the hogs come back. If ruined fields are the visible wounds, there's a darker danger. One that can't be seen or heard, but can kill a family, a herd, even an entire industry. Disease from wild hogs. They aren't just gluttons. They're walking biohazards, carriers of dozens of bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Invisible enemies that spread through blood, urine, and contaminated soil, infiltrating barns, infecting livestock, even threatening human lives. Tom Carter, a tall, weather-worn man from the heart of Louisiana, once thought he understood every threat nature could throw his way. He raised cattle just like his father and grandfather before him, on pastures where golden sunsets kissed the grass and baby calves danced around their mothers. That was his peace, until the hogs came, started with strange signs, torn up grass, muddy trails along the creek, fence lines bent out of shape. And then one bitter morning, Tom found a dead calf, stiff, eyes wide open, frozen in the frost. He thought it was a coyote, but it wasn't. It was a hog, and it hadn't just killed. In just 3 months, Tom lost nearly 20 calves, some mauled, others sick with strange fevers that burned hot before fading them into stillness. The vets gave it a name, leptospirosis, a disease carried by wild hogs that can spread to humans. Brucellosis, African swine fever, names that once sounded distant, foreign, now creeping silently into farms across America. They don't need to attack, Tom said, eyes dark with exhaustion. Their presence alone is enough to bring death. He began spending hours each day disinfecting, vaccinating, rebuilding fences. Cost soared. Time with his animals shrank. And the fear, it never left, because it wasn't just the cattle at risk anymore. It was the people, too. In a small Texas town, a 12-year-old boy named Lucas was rushed to the hospital with a raging fever, slipping in and out of consciousness. All he had done was play near the creek behind his house, a stream that was once crystal clear and cool. Now it ran murky and tainted. The wild hogs had been there. They'd urinated in the water, churned up the mud, stirred invisible sickness into the flow. By the time his family understood what had happened, it was almost too late. Lucas survived, but the weeks in the hospital were a nightmare no one wanted to relive. "We used to think wild hogs only ruined crops," his mother said through tears. "But now I know they steal your sleep. They steal your child's safety. Wild hogs are omnivores. They eat everything, from fallen fruit and tubers to rotting carcasses. And in doing so, they become walking petri dishes. Bacteria, parasites, disease eggs. Just one lick, one scratch, one sip of dirty water, and the door is open. Sickness walks in. Experts call them mobile disease reservoirs. But to the people living with them, there's something worse, an invisible curse, a creeping shadow that keeps you from ever feeling safe. Because when nature strikes with fury, it tears things apart. But when it poisons you slowly, silently, that's when you're truly powerless. If humans can count the ears of corn destroyed, the calves lost, nature keeps track in a different way, through absence. The absence of birdsong, of a bush that never grows back, of a forest that once whispered with wind, now silent as a tombstone. Wild hogs aren't just the farmer's enemy. They are a black flood, an invading force unraveling the fragile web of America's ecosystems. They don't march with swords, but they leave behind destruction as brutal as any army. In Hawaii, a paradise where sky kisses earth, the rainforests once exploded with color. Birds sang from the treetops. Native flowers bloomed like bursts of living fire. Then came the hogs. They didn't fly like birds, didn't climb like monkeys, didn't sing with the wind, but they could dig. With hooves like blades and snouts like living backhoes, they ripped into the soft soil, tore through young roots, collapsing entire ecosystems from the ground up. Low-lying bird nests were trampled without remorse. Rare plants, decades in the making, were shredded in hours. They devoured everything, useful or useless, as if testing the very limits of ruin. In Florida, the Everglades were once a sanctuary, a living green quilt of swamp and life, where fish, birds, snakes, and plants breathed in harmony. Now, wild hogs have torn that rhythm apart. They root up the already fragile soil. Erosion spreads. Trees fall. The waters darken. A system born of millions of years now bleeds out, inch by inch. Dr. Emily Rivera, a seasoned ecologist, gave 10 years of her life to the Everglades. She remembers the first time she saw what wild hogs had done. It was a summer morning, and she'd taken her students to survey a lush, native plant zone. What they found instead was a scar, a barren patch of cratered earth, stinking of torn soil. Precious ferns lay dead, endemic snails baked in the dry sun. "I felt like I had been uprooted, too," Emily said, her eyes shining with tears. "I didn't just lose a plant species. I lost an entire living community. The hogs don't know what they're destroying, and that's the most terrifying part. They don't care if it's old-growth forest or prairie, native or invasive. They just dig, they just eat, they just breathe, as if consumed by a hunger with no end. And wherever they go, weaker species must retreat. Fawns find no grass to graze. Sea turtles find no sand to nest. Endangered birds find no branches to rest. Whole food chains, entire microworlds, shatter like glass dropped onto tile. Wild hogs don't need military tactics to invade. They are survival instincts unchained, a feral hunger unleashed in a world without fences. And when they take land, the loser isn't just mankind. It's nature itself. No one wants to hunt on their own land. No one wants to turn their fields into battlefields. But when wild hogs arrive, uninvited, unstoppable, farmers have no choice but to rise, grab a gun, and fight for what's left. The war against wild hogs is unlike any battle humanity has ever faced. The enemy carries no flag, has no leader, no plan, but it has instincts, numbers, and a terrifying persistence. It doesn't negotiate, comes only to eat, destroy, and multiply. In Texas, where hogs have become a living nightmare, officials have turned to unprecedented tactics. Helicopter hunting. Each day, choppers sweep the skies, sharpshooters firing at herds below. Gunshots echo like evening bells, cold, deliberate, final. But the impact, like throwing stones into a rising tide. Kill one, 10 more are born. Clear one nest, 3 more surface at the forest's edge. It's the wild hog's breeding rate that breaks spirits the fastest. They reproduce like the world is ending, like their only mission is to ensure their kind will never disappear. So people build traps, massive steel drop gates big enough to catch whole herds. These are no ordinary pens. They're rigged with cameras, sensors, and sophisticated triggers. But it's like facing an enemy that evolves. The hogs learn. They watch. They test. They avoid traps as if they'd studied them. In many cases, farmers have found signs not just of avoidance, but sabotage. Bent steel doors, cameras chewed to pieces, mounds of dirt piled over sensors. Who still dares to call them just animals? Some states have tried poison, slow-acting toxins hidden in bait, but outrage followed. Who could guarantee that poison wouldn't seep into the soil, run off into streams, kill scavenger birds, or sneak its way into the very food chain humans depend on? Joe Hargrove, the farmer we first met, is no longer just a victim. He's a quiet soldier in a war with no name. Each night, he patrols his fence line, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every scratch, ears tuned to every rustle of wind. He sets traps, installs floodlights, plays predator sounds through loudspeakers. But there's no hate in his gaze, only the quiet sorrow of a man who kills to survive. "I don't hate them," Joe says, his voice rough from the night wind. "They're doing what nature demands of them, and I'm doing what I have to." Behind every gunshot is a sigh, because no one wants to be a destroyer, especially not on the land that raised them. But they know, if they don't act, they'll lose everything. Not just their crops, but their homes, their futures, the very way of life that fed generations. This war has no maps, no front lines, no end date, plays out every night, in darkness under moonlight, between the roars from the woods, and the pounding hearts of those who wait in fear. It is the quietest war, but the most relentless. When darkness falls, people look for light, even if it's just a flicker at the horizon's edge. And in this long war against wild hogs, amid shattered fields, ruined barns, and sleepless nights, People still cling to hope, fragile though it may be, like a candle flickering in a hurricane. Scientists have joined the battle, not with bullets or cages, but with brains. They're working on sustainable, bloodless solutions. One of the most promising, biotech, hormones and sterilization vaccines designed to lower hog fertility. Still experimental, still early, but a small light in a dark tunnel, a hope for long-term, humane, effective control. At the same time, nonprofits, environmentalists, and local communities are coming together. They're not just giving farmers tools and knowledge. They're building maps, training programs, sharing stories. In the midst of pain, unity has found its voice. In Texas, some hunting groups have taken an unexpected turn, turning wild hogs into business. It sounds ironic, but with skilled handling and rigorous inspection, wild boar meat has started appearing on fine dining menus, a rugged, primal delicacy that carries the raw spirit of a harsh land. From smoked sausages to slow-roasted cuts, wild hogs are no longer just destroyers. They're a resource if properly controlled. Maria Thompson, the woman who once wept in her ruined peanut field, is standing strong again. She now works with a local co-op, using sensors and surveillance cameras to monitor hog activity. She's even started a blog, sharing her hard-earned tips for protecting crops, and her voice has found resonance across the country. "We are not alone," she writes. "We are a community learning to live with a nightmare, and when we stop fearing it, we're already halfway to victory." Tom Carter, the man who lost his calves to disease, has become an advocate for vaccination and biosecurity in small farms. He travels from county to county, speaking with ranchers, sharing his story, and warning them about the invisible danger wild hogs carry. But now, his eyes no longer reflect despair. They reflect resolve, a clear-eyed vigilance born from loss and grounded in purpose. And Joe Hargrove, the farmer with a rifle by his fence that first morning, he's still there, still tilling the land, still planting corn, still tending the soil his ancestors left behind. He no longer hopes wild hogs will vanish, but he believes that with knowledge, with technology, with unity, people can learn to coexist, to defend what's theirs without needing to kill every last one. "We used to think nature was something to conquer," Joe says, "but maybe we need to learn how to live with it, even with our most difficult enemies." In the quiet after the battles, small voices rise. A child laughing as they run through the corn, the hammering of a farmer repairing a fence, the engine of a tractor starting a new day. These are the sounds of people, unbroken, unwilling to surrender, still writing their own destiny. Wild hogs, they may seem like just another animal, but to America they've become a living metaphor, a brutal clash between nature's instincts and human order. They force us to ask harder questions about how much control we truly have, about the consequences of centuries-old decisions, about how we choose to live alongside forces we can never fully destroy. Each hog's footprint is a scar on the land. Each ruined harvest is an expensive lesson. But every person who rises from the wreckage, who keeps planting, keeps building, keeps dreaming, is a flickering light in the dark. This war isn't over. It may stretch on for years, for generations. But as long as people stand their ground, as long as they keep trying, with science, with solidarity, with a will that refuses to break, hope will remain. And maybe on some future dawn, that roar from the thicket will be nothing more than the echo of a wild, distant past. Deep in the shadows of ancient forests, where sunlight barely dares to slip through the cracks between the leaves, something's waking up. These aren't wolves. They're not bears. They're wild boars, silent hunters with razor-sharp tusks and eyes that burn red like fresh spilled blood. From the untamed wilderness of America to the quiet countryside of Europe, they've left behind tales of terror, wounds that never heal, and screams that echo through the endless night. So grab a seat, dim the lights, and let me tell you about the monsters lurking in the shadows of the woods. But be warned, they might be listening. Back in 2019, in a little nowhere town called Coldwater, tucked away in Tennessee, folks started whispering about something strange. Coldwater's the kind of place where time feels frozen. Dirt roads wind through cornfields, old wooden houses creak in the wind, and a thick forest wraps around the town like a living wall. People here live slow, hunting, farming, swapping stories by the fire. But on one bone-chilling winter night, all that peace shattered like mist in a storm. Jake Harper, a seasoned hunter, decided to head into the woods to track a deer he'd been after for weeks. Jake wasn't the type to scare easy. He'd stared down black bears, dodged rattlesnakes, and weathered storms that'd make most folks run for cover. With his rifle slung over his shoulder and a hunting knife in his pocket, he stepped into the forest under a pale, ghostly moon. Dry branches snapped under his boots, and his breath hung in the air like wisps of smoke. But that night, something felt off. A cold shiver crawled down his spine, not from the winter chill, but from the feeling that something was watching him. The rustle of leaves suddenly stopped, like the whole forest was holding its breath. Then, out of the darkness, came a sound, a low, guttural growl, unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It wasn't a bear's roar or a wolf's howl. It was deeper, primal, like the forest itself was breathing. Jake gripped his rifle, his heart pounding like a drum. He crept toward the sound, figuring it was just a regular wild boar. Boars weren't rare in Tennessee, and they usually steered clear of people. Jake had bagged dozens of them without a hitch. But as he neared a dense thicket, his eyes locked onto a massive shape. It was a wild boar, but nothing like he'd ever seen. This thing was nearly as tall as a man, its black bristles stiff as steel, its curved tusks glinting in the moonlight, and its eyes, God, those eyes, glowed red like embers, staring right through Jake, like they could see his soul. His throat went dry. He raised his rifle, his finger trembling on the trigger, but before he could fire, the beast charged with terrifying speed. Its roar shook the forest, drowning out the wind. Jake barely got out a scream before it slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. Its tusks ripped through his thigh, blood gushing like a river. He tried to roll away, but the boar wouldn't stop. It attacked like it was driven by something not of this world, its red eyes blazing in the dark. Jake swung his knife, stabbing into its shoulder, but the beast just roared in rage and rammed him into a tree. His ribs cracked, and darkness started closing in. By some miracle, Jake's gunshot had alerted a group of hunters nearby. They came running, firing round after round into the creature. It took dozens of bullets before the massive boar finally collapsed, its black blood pooling on the forest floor. But not before it left Jake with scars that would change his life forever. He survived, dragged to a hospital with deep gashes and a leg nearly torn apart. But the real horror wasn't the scars on his body. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw those glowing red eyes, like the beast was still hunting him from beyond the grave. The folks in Coldwater called it the Black Phantom. No one knew where it came from. Some said it was just a boar mutated by chemicals from an old factory nearby. Others whispered it was the embodiment of an ancient curse, woken from the earth itself. Whatever it was, that attack changed Coldwater forever. The woods that were once a hunter's paradise became a no man's land. And on quiet nights, low growls still echo through the dark, reminding everyone that the Black Phantom might not be truly gone. Thousands of miles away, in the legendary Black Forest of Germany, another story was brewing. It was 2021, and the Black Forest wasn't just a place of fairy tales about witches and werewolves anymore. A new threat, far more real, was rising. Wild boars had long been a problem in Europe, tearing up crops, attacking livestock, and sometimes even people. But what happened in the Black Forest that year wasn't just a problem. It was a nightmare. Anna Schmidt, a young biologist, was sent to the forest to study the sudden boom in the wild boar population. Anna was a no-nonsense type, not one for ghost stories. She believed everything had a scientific explanation. Armed with a backpack full of gear and a tablet loaded with data, she ventured into the Black Forest, where towering trees blocked out the sun and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth. One afternoon, as Anna was setting up a camera trap near a stream, she heard an odd sound, a long scraping hiss, like metal dragging across stone. She froze, scanning the trees, but saw nothing but swaying branches and heavy shadows. She told herself it was just the wind, but as she bent down to check her camera, a foul stench hit her, blood and rotting earth. Her heart raced. She looked up and froze in terror. A pack of wild boars, at least 20 strong, stood silently just a few yards away. They didn't move. They didn't make a sound. They just stared at her with lifeless eyes. The leader, a massive male with silver-gray fur, stepped forward. A long scar ran from its eye to its jaw, like it had survived countless battles. Anna tried to back away, but her foot caught on a root. She fell, and that's when the pack attacked. They surged forward like a tidal wave, their tusks tearing through her clothes and flesh. Anna screamed, swinging her small knife, but it was useless. The boars didn't flinch, didn't fear. They were driven by pure bloodlust. In a desperate moment, a gunshot rang out. A ranger patrolling nearby had heard her screams. He fired wildly, scattering the pack. Anna was pulled from the blood-soaked leaves, but she was barely alive. Her left arm was shredded, and deep bites on her chest made every breath agony. At the hospital, she could only whisper one thing. Those weren't boars. They were something else. Anna survived, but she never went back to the Black Forest. She quit her job, moved to a big city where trees and shadows couldn't haunt her. But the nightmares followed. She saw those empty eyes, heard that metallic hiss, and felt the scarred boar waiting for her in the dark. When her camera footage was recovered, it left scientists stunned. For a few seconds before it was destroyed, the camera showed the boars standing in a perfect circle, like they were performing some kind of ritual. And the scarred leader, it seemed to stare right into the lens. Anna's story spread like wildfire across Europe, and the Black Forest became a focal point of fear. Locals started calling the boars Die Schatten, the shadows. They believed the forest was cursed, that the boars weren't just animals but tools of an ancient force, awakened by humanity's intrusion. Rangers reported that the boar population wasn't shrinking, it was growing, despite massive hunting efforts. And on moonless nights, that metallic hiss still echoed, like a warning from the dark. Back in the States, in 2023, another attack rocked rural Arkansas. The Carter family, living near the Ouachita Forest, faced a night of pure horror. The Carters were a family of 4. John, the dad, Mary, the mom, and their kids, 14-year-old Emily and 10-year-old Ben. They ran a small farm, raising pigs and growing corn. Wild boars sometimes wandered near their land, but John always scared them off with his shotgun. One crisp fall night, as the family sat down for dinner, strange noises came from the pig pen. Their livestock squealed in panic, like they were being torn apart. John grabbed his gun and ran outside, thinking it was a coyote or a stray boar. But when he reached the pen, what he saw stopped him cold. A dozen massive boars, unnaturally huge, were ripping his pigs to shreds, blood pooling on the dirt. But the worst part, their eyes weren't animal eyes. They were deep, black voids, like they had no souls. John shouted, firing at the pack, but they didn't flee. Instead, they turned and charged him. Mary, hearing the shots, ran out with an axe, desperate to save her husband. But the boars were too strong. They knocked John down, tearing into his stomach. Mary swung her axe, sinking it into one boar's skull, but it just roared and bit into her leg. Emily and Ben watched from the window, screaming in terror. Emily, only 14, grabbed her dad's old rifle and fired wildly, driving the boars back into the woods. When the cops arrived, they found John dead, his body mangled. Mary survived but lost a leg and was left in shock. Emily and Ben were sent to live with relatives, but they never spoke of that night again. Locals said the Washita forest had changed. The boars weren't normal anymore. They were fiercer, smarter, and seemed driven by something. After the Carter attack, scientists started digging into the wild boar phenomenon across America and Europe. They found the boar population was exploding, and the animals were changing. Some were unnaturally large, with thicker hides and sharper tusks. One theory blamed pollution and climate change for their aggression. But the folks living near the forests had a different answer. The boars weren't animals anymore. They were the wrath of nature itself, or worse, pawns of something darker. In 2024, one final attack grabbed the world's attention. In Tuscany, Italy, a group of tourists was hiking through a forest to explore ancient Roman ruins. The group of 6, from all over the world, was led by a guide named Marco. They didn't know the locals had been avoiding these woods for months, ever since a farmer was attacked by boars and vanished. That afternoon, as the group rested by a stream, they heard an eerie sound, not rustling leaves, but a low whisper, like voices murmuring in the dark. Marco, who'd grown up in the area, felt a chill. He told everyone to pack up and leave. But before they could move, a pack of boars appeared from all sides, surrounding them. These weren't ordinary boars. Their fur was caked with mud and blood, and their jaws held fragments of bone, human bone. Panic erupted. One tourist, Sarah from the US, tried to run but was tackled by a boar. The pack tore her apart in seconds. Marco drew his hunting knife, trying to protect the group, but the boars didn't flinch. They attacked with chilling coordination, like they were following orders. Another tourist, Hans from Germany, was dragged into the bushes, his screams fading into silence. Only Marco and a young woman named Lena survived, hiding in a small cave until dawn. When rescuers arrived, they found only scattered remains in the forest. Marco and Lena told their story, but no one believed them. People said they were delusional from trauma. But Marco knew the truth. In that cave, he'd seen something he'd never forget. An ancient carving on the wall, showing a massive boar with glowing red eyes, surrounded by kneeling figures. Beneath it, in Old Latin, were the words, Ira Naturi, the wrath of nature. The Tuscany attack shook the world. Scientists, journalists, and even paranormal investigators flocked to the area, searching for answers. Some said the boars were evolving, becoming a new, deadlier species. Others believed they were controlled by a supernatural force, a curse awakened by humanity's destruction of the natural world. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: wild boars were no longer just animals. Today, as you hear this story, remember that the forests are still alive, still breathing. Out there, in the darkness, the boars are moving, their eyes glowing, their growls echoing. They're waiting, they're hunting, and maybe, just maybe, they're closer than you think. So the next time you step into the woods, listen closely. If you hear a metallic hiss, whispers in the shadows, or a low, rumbling growl, run. Run as fast as you can, because the Black Phantom, Die Schatten, or whatever you call them, they don't forgive. And if you think this is just a story, take a look out your window. What do you see in the dark? Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe it's them. Wild boars are no longer just a rural problem. They've become an escalating crisis, reaching deep into the suburbs of Turkey. In areas once considered safe, Eerily unfamiliar sounds now fill the night. Low guttural growls echoing through backyards, the rustle of bushes outside garden fences, and the sudden flash of bulky shadows caught on doorbell cameras. For urban families used to car horns and soft jazz drifting from apartment balconies, the new sounds are startling, an unmistakable intrusion of the wild into the everyday. By morning, the signs are undeniable. Lawns shredded like battlefield debris, trash cans overturned, park pathways littered with hoofprints. What was once a quiet neighborhood now feels under siege. It's no longer uncommon for security footage to reveal a lone boar trotting across a driveway or a small herd sniffing around a playground at dawn. Residents wake to damaged flower beds, broken irrigation lines, and eerie silence, the kind that precedes another night of fear. But for farmers, the people whose lives and livelihoods depend on the land, the situation is far graver. Crops they planted and nurtured through heat and drought are ripped up overnight. Fences are smashed. Water lines are broken. Livestock are wounded, sometimes fatally. Each attack feels personal, like the land itself is under assault. Entire harvests can vanish in a matter of hours, turning months of labor into nothing but trampled stalks and scattered roots. More chilling is the behavior of these animals. They aren't shy. They aren't afraid. A friend of mine, a cattle rancher, was walking his dog along a familiar trail near the woods when a large boar emerged from the brush. It didn't hesitate. It charged, slamming the dog against a tree and disappearing just as quickly. These encounters, once rare, are now regular. Children have been chased near rural schools. Outdoor pets vanish. Adults carry pepper spray and batons just to do yard work. Campsites go unused. Families stop hiking in nearby woods. Fear creeps into everyday life. And so, I decided I couldn't wait anymore. Every night, beneath the pale moonlight reflecting off rusted tin roofs, I shoulder my rifle and walk the edges of my land. The trees I once knew like the back of my hand now feel like enemy terrain. Every crack of a branch puts me on edge. I track the hoofprints, listen for distant rustles, and sometimes, I see the glint of eyes watching from the undergrowth. This isn't sport. It's not a weekend hobby. It's a quiet, determined fight for survival. For my cornfields, my chickens, my goats, and for my sense of safety. I no longer hunt because I want to. I hunt because I must. If I don't, I risk losing everything to creatures that fear nothing. This is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming peace, field by field, night by night. Across Turkey, the wild boar crisis is being taken seriously. These animals are no longer just a nuisance. They're a direct threat to national agriculture and rural stability. Their population has surged due to declining predator numbers and the spread of farmland, which unintentionally provides endless food. What was once thick forest is now plowed and seeded, easy pickings for a hungry boar. Human activity, ironically, has made their lives easier. Scientific studies support what we see in the field. According to research published in Agricultural Damage following the recent expansion of wild boar, regions bordering forests report the heaviest crop losses. Corn, wheat, and vineyards suffer the most, often with entire fields destroyed overnight. In some regions, economic losses have crossed millions in local currency, pushing small farms to the brink. The damage isn't only agricultural. These animals carry diseases and parasites. One particularly dangerous parasite, Macrocantharynchus hirudinaceus, can infect livestock and even humans, causing severe intestinal damage. This transforms the wild boar from a nuisance to a public health hazard. Cases of zoonotic diseases traced to wild boars are increasingly reported, prompting concern among veterinarians and epidemiologists. To address the growing threat, the Turkish government passed hunting law number 4915 in 2003. It mandates that all wild boar hunting be regulated. Licenses, quotas, seasons, and designated zones are enforced. But enforcement is challenging. Despite the law, only an estimated 10% of the boar population is culled each year, far below what's needed to halt their expansion. Many hunters struggle with limited access to hunting zones, outdated equipment, and bureaucratic red tape. Alternative methods have been explored. Electric fences are used to guard crops, and scent repellents try to steer boars away. Some regions have even attempted live traps and relocation. But these methods are expensive and often ineffective over time. Boars are clever and adapt quickly. They learn the smells, the sounds, and the traps. They test boundaries, dig under fences, and return night after night. That's why some regions have turned to controlled hunting tourism. Turkey has become a hotspot for international hunters, especially from Europe. Guided boar hunts can cost between $1,000 and $5,000, depending on location and amenities. These excursions generate revenue for local communities and provide a degree of population control. In rural towns, outfitters and guides build livelihoods around these seasonal hunts, boosting the local economy. But with this commercial hunting comes responsibility. Ethical hunting practices are emphasized. No killing young, no disturbing mating seasons, no wasteful shooting. Hunters are briefed on the ecological role of boars, their part in soil turnover, seed dispersal, and forest health. Hunting is presented not just as a necessity, but as stewardship. As a way to maintain balance, not destroy it. After each hunt, detailed reports are submitted. Number of boars taken, their sex, location, and physical condition. This data is vital for monitoring population trends and ensuring a healthy male-to-female ratio, which helps prevent uncontrolled reproduction. These records also feed into larger conservation databases used by wildlife biologists and land managers. Some areas complement hunting with educational outreach. Local governments host workshops for farmers and hunters, teaching them how to identify boar activity, protect their land, and understand the species' ecological impact. In schools, children learn about wildlife balance and why boars, while destructive, are still part of the natural system. Public awareness campaigns run on local TV, radio, and social media, helping communities act early and act smart. It's a more nuanced approach, less about eradication, more about coexistence and balance. In some progressive regions, farmers and conservationists work together to develop long-term control plans. This includes rotating deterrents, building smarter fencing systems, and using motion-activated alarms that scare off intruders without harm. In pilot zones, these integrated methods have shown promising results. Crucially, people's perceptions are shifting. The wild boar is no longer seen solely as a villain, but as a complex part of the ecosystem, one that must be managed, not blindly destroyed. This mindset fosters patience, planning, and partnership, which in turn promotes sustainability. When science, tradition, and community meet, real solutions take root. Because in the end, this isn't just a story of man versus beast. It's the story of how modern society negotiates with nature, of how we defend what we've built without destroying what we inherited, and of how the quiet war waged in the fields of Turkey might become a model for wildlife conflict around the world. The wild boar problem won't vanish overnight, but with knowledge, respect, and coordinated action, we can face it together. We can reclaim the night, restore the fields, and walk our lands again with confidence, knowing we stood up for balance, not domination. It was a tranquil afternoon in the coastal town of Ditim, where the summer breeze carried scents of pine and salt. A British woman, long settled in the serene neighborhood of Yeşiltepe, leashed her dogs and headed out for a routine walk. The narrow dirt path behind her house, lined with olive trees and quiet shrubs, had always been a place of peace, a brief escape from the world. But that afternoon, peace turned to panic. From the underbrush burst a massive wild boar, muscles tense and tusks flashing under the sun. It charged with terrifying speed, catching the woman and her dogs off guard. She barely had time to react before the boar slammed into her, tossing her off her feet and into the dry grass. Pain tore through her leg as the animal's tusks raked through skin and tissue, leaving a deep gash across her thigh. Her dog's instinct overriding fear lunged at the attacker, snarling, biting, barking with fury. The boar hesitated, grunted, and retreated, disappearing back into the thicket from which it had come. The silence afterward was deafening. The woman lay trembling, blood staining her clothes, her breath shallow and fast. Her loyal companions stood guard, circling her, whimpering. Neighbors heard the commotion and came running. Within minutes, she was rushed to Ditim State Hospital, where doctors worked quickly to stop the bleeding and close the wound. Though her injuries were not life-threatening, they were serious, and the trauma would take much longer to heal. The incident spread quickly through the local community, shocking residents and raising immediate concerns. Wild boars had long been known to inhabit the surrounding hills, but never before had they come so close or struck with such violence. The local municipality issued warnings, advising residents to avoid walking near forested areas at dusk and dawn. Pet owners were urged to keep animals leashed. Patrols were temporarily increased in the neighborhood. But behind the official precautions was a deeper, quieter fear. This may not be the last attack. Experts soon weighed in. Wildlife biologists explained that boars, especially females protecting their young, can become highly aggressive when startled. Years of habitat loss and human encroachment had pushed these animals closer to residential zones. In search of food, water, and territory, they were crossing boundaries that once separated human life from the wild. In many parts of Turkey, similar encounters were already being reported. Wild boar populations were rising, emboldened by easy access to farmland and the absence of natural predators. For many, this attack in Ditim was not an anomaly, it was a warning. A signal that the relationship between humans and the natural world was out of balance. The British woman, after days of recovery, gave a statement to local news. "I never imagined something like this could happen here. It wasn't just the pain. It was the shock, the realization that I wasn't safe on my own path." Her words resonated far beyond her neighborhood. Discussions began among local officials, conservationists, and citizens. Some called for stricter hunting laws, others for investment in fencing and deterrence. A few advocated for public education campaigns, teaching people how to live alongside wildlife without inviting danger. But at the heart of it all was a hard truth. The wild, once distant, had returned, and it wasn't going away. The story of Ditim's wild boar attack is not just about a single woman's injury. It is a microcosm of a broader tension unfolding across the countryside. A fragile thread between safety and wilderness, between coexistence and conflict. As Turkey continues to grapple with growing wildlife pressures, the question remains: how do we protect our communities without forgetting our place in nature? Perhaps the answer lies not in fear, but in respect. Not in domination, but in understanding. Because this land belongs to more than just us. And if we're not careful, the forest may one day remind us again.
These boars have torn up my rice field. I can't sit and watch anymore. In response, the wildlife control team has deployed a special tactic: aerial hunting. I'm currently at the launch point where the hunting crew is preparing. On a misty early morning, before the sun had even pierced through the forest canopy, a team of seasoned volunteers awoke and prepared for a critical mission: a wild boar extermination campaign. This was the first campaign of the year, launched in response to an alarming surge in wild boars destroying farmlands and threatening rural communities. Wild boars, creatures typically confined to deep forests, had begun invading villages, ravaging crops, damaging property, and even posing a threat to human safety. Worse still, they carried infectious diseases capable of spreading to livestock and people. Faced with this growing crisis, the volunteer team, in collaboration with local authorities, initiated a well-planned and challenging hunting operation. After reviewing maps, checking gear, and identifying target zones, the team ventured deep into the woods. Subtle rustling sounds from the underbrush and fresh hoof prints in the welcome to the wilds of Africa, a place where apex predators reign over the savannah with power, patience, and instinctive survival skills. In today's video, we'll explore the African lion, a symbol of nature's dominance, and confront a troubling reality. Humans are no longer just observers. They are slowly becoming prey. The African lion, Panthera leo, is a highly adapted predator built to take down large prey. With an average weight of 330 to 550 pounds, adult lions are capable of killing animals 3 to 4 times their size. Their prey may include wildebeest, large zebras, and even Cape buffalo. With powerful jaws, thick neck muscles, and exceptional teamwork within the pride, lions have become feared generals of the grasslands, a title they've earned and maintained through brute strength and strategy. But the savannah is no longer exclusively theirs. Expanding human settlements, ecotourism zones, and agricultural development near protected areas have blurred the lines between wilderness and human life. And in many cases, humans have unintentionally become the intruders. As a result, encounters between lions and people have increased. And sometimes lions don't hunt wildebeest. They hunt humans. A tragic incident in South Africa in 2022 underscores this danger. A female tourist was killed by a lion right next to her vehicle after lowering the window to film the animal. What seemed like an innocent act triggered the lion's predatory instinct.